The new VP told 40 people I was mediocre at best, even though I built half the systems they use daily. So I stood up, looked around the room, and said 5 words that made the CEO instantly fire him on the spot. I was standing in the glass-walled executive conference room of Caldwell Systems with 30 people staring at me like they were watching a slow-motion car crash. My badge was disabled. My laptop access revoked. And right in front of everyone, Donovan Keene, our polished, camera-ready CEO, said the sentence I never imagined hearing after 7 years of building this company from the inside out. Nora, we believe you've compromised the integrity of multiple core systems. IT security found evidence of intentional sabotage originating under your credentials. My ears rang. My body went cold. Sabotage, me. Before I could form a word, Marion Locke, the new COO with the personality of a marble statue and the moral compass of a lone shark, slid a stack of termination papers across the table. We're also launching a formal investigation, she said, completely expressionless. Given the severity of the breaches, your actions may have put us at legal risk. We've brought in external counsel. The responses around the table were instant gasps, shifting chairs, Avani from QA whispering, "What the hell?" under her breath. Sabotage, legal risk, external counsel. This wasn't a firing. This was a public execution. Marion didn't blink. Security will escort you out now. Please don't attempt to return to the building without clearance. I laughed. Actually laughed, one of those sharp, disbelieving sounds that bursts out when reality becomes so absurd you can't process it. You think I sabotaged my own systems? I said, the words coming out calmer than I felt. Half this company runs on code I built myself. Donovan didn't meet my eyes. He always met my eyes, always. That hit harder than anything they'd said. Security stepped forward. People looked away. And for the first time since I'd joined Caldwell Systems, way back when we were renting office space above a vape shop, and our servers overheated if someone microwaved soup, I realized how fast loyalty evaporates in a room full of terrified people. I gathered my things. My hands weren't shaking. Not yet. As I reached the door, Donovan finally looked up. His expression wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was fear. A very specific kind of fear. Fear of what I knew. Fear of what I could prove. Fear of what I could do if I were pushed far enough. And that was when it hit me so hard I nearly stumbled. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't incompetence. This wasn't office politics. Someone had set me up, and not sloppily. Not impulsively. No, this was calculated. Every access log forged. Every vulnerability pinned to me. Every piece of evidence conveniently discovered right after a major outage that only 3 people in the company knew the root cause of. This was bigger than Marion. Bigger than Donovan. Bigger than the bogus accusations. Someone needed me gone, and they needed it done publicly. As security swiped their badge and escorted me out through the lobby, past employees who'd worked beside me for years without ever noticing how much of this place relied on me, I caught a glimpse of something in the reflection of the glass doors. A man in a slate-gray suit, watching. He wasn't Caldwell leadership. He wasn't security. He wasn't legal. But he nodded, slowly, deliberately, when our eyes met, like a man acknowledging the end or the beginning. Outside, the sun felt too bright. My chest felt too tight. My mind raced through every possible scenario and none of them made sense. But one thing did. Whoever set me up had made a mistake. They left me alive. And they forgot one very important truth. I built the systems they think they can hide behind. And I know exactly where to look. I turned away from the building, exhaled, and whispered out loud to no one. Okay, let's see who really wants me gone. If I'm being honest, I didn't end up at Caldwell Systems because I dreamed of being in tech leadership or because I wanted to build infrastructure that half the country now unknowingly relies on. I ended up there because, for most of my life, I learned to survive by fixing things that other people broke. I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, in an apartment where the heat rattled like it was coughing out its last breath every winter. My mom worked double shifts at a clinic. My dad left before I was old enough to understand why. So I became the one who figured things out. Broken water heater. I watched YouTube tutorials and fixed it. Landlord refusing to show up. I patched walls myself. School laptop dying before finals. I rebuilt it from parts at the thrift shop. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for someone else to show up. And honestly, I think that mindset never left me. I met Donovan Keene at a tech meetup in Newark when I was 23 and working at a miserable job, maintaining legacy systems at some insurance company that treated me like a glorified fire extinguisher. Donovan was giving a talk about his revolutionary startup Caldwell Systems, which at the time was a 6-person team renting space above a vape shop next to a failing tattoo parlor. His pitch was bold, too bold. But what caught my attention was the truth underneath his performative CEO swagger. He had a solid product idea buried under terrible execution. Afterward, I approached him and said, "Your architecture is going to collapse the second you scale beyond 200 users." He stared like he'd been slapped. Then he asked me to explain. By the end of the conversation, he offered me a job, and I took it. For the first 2 years, it felt like we were building something real. We were scrappy, broke, and constantly seconds away from disaster, but we also cared. Everyone pitched in. Everyone listened. Everyone respected each other's work. And Donovan, back then, he wasn't the polished, careful, PR-trained man who later became the face of the company. He was messy, brilliant, impulsive, and he trusted me. When we landed our first major enterprise client, it was because I rebuilt our entire middleware framework in a weekend. The client never knew Donovan had nearly lost the deal 3 separate times. The only thing that mattered was that my code held. Year by year, Caldwell grew. We moved into bigger offices, then a real building, then a campus. Departments formed, middle managers multiplied like mold. Suddenly there were committees for things that never needed meetings. Suddenly I wasn't in the room anymore. And that's when things shifted. My work went from being crucial to expected. From Nora saved us again to who maintains this system, it runs itself. Which is the problem with building something flawless. People start believing it doesn't need the person who built it. The moment the board expanded, I started noticing the cracks. New executives came in, people who didn't understand the systems, didn't care about the history, didn't even know where our architecture had come from. They talked about visibility metrics and innovation optics, while I silently prevented our core hardware from catching fire. Then there was Marion Locke, the new COO from Chicago who joined 8 months ago. No background in tech, no understanding of how interdependent our systems were. But she understood power. And she understood Donovan. She watched me like I was something she needed to dissect before swallowing. Meanwhile, Donovan started pulling away. Less collaborative, more guarded, more closed-door meetings. Less trust, I chalked it up to stress. Growth, pressure from investors. But then small things happened. Decisions that didn't make sense. Sudden reorganizations. Critical permissions revoked for security restructuring. A new data auditing process no one asked for. Administrative changes that touched my systems in ways that felt intentional. A storm was forming long before my firing. I just hadn't recognized it. Or maybe I didn't want to believe that the man who once trusted me with his entire company would someday sit silently while I was branded a saboteur. That ignorance was on me. But now, after seeing the fear in Donovan's eyes as security escorted me out, now I knew one thing for sure: someone wanted me gone. And Donovan wasn't innocent. He was involved, whether out of fear, ambition, or something far darker. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. 9:30, Riverside Overlook, come alone, trust me. I stared at it for a long moment, then grabbed my jacket. Whatever this was, backstory wouldn't save me anymore. Only truth would. The Riverside Overlook in Newark isn't the kind of place you meet strangers at night unless you're either stupid, desperate, or furious enough that fear stops mattering. I was definitely the last two. The wind coming off the river stung my face, and the streetlights buzzed the way they always do in older neighborhoods, like they're debating whether to stay alive. I stood there with my hood up, hands shoved in my pockets, trying to figure out why my life had turned into something that felt more like a slow-burn thriller than a career in system architecture. At 9:36 p.m., footsteps approached. I spun around, ready for anything except the person who actually walked toward me, Avani Patel, Caldwell's senior QA engineer, my closest ally in the building. The person who once spent an entire Saturday helping me rebuild a corrupted deployment pipeline because she trusted my gut more than any documentation. The same Avani who mouthed, "This is bullshit," during my firing. Jesus, Nora, she said, pulling back her hood. You actually came alone. You told me to. Right, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't. She looked around nervously. We don't have a lot of time. I didn't know whether to hug her or accuse her of being the reason my life had detonated. My mind was in 1,000 places, but one thing came out clearly. Why did you say you know who framed me? She exhaled hard, like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Because I watched it happen. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, you watched it? I mean, she said, voice low, someone used your credentials to push a corrupted update into the core compliance engine. And I was monitoring system access that night. I saw whose terminal it came from. My pulse pounded in my neck. Who? She looked directly at me, and that's when everything in my body went cold. It was Donovan's. I laughed, one sharp, painful sound. No, no, Avani. If he wanted me gone, he wouldn't need to frame me. He'd just fire me. Not if he needed you out publicly, she countered. Not if someone else was watching him. Not if this whole thing is bigger than him. Bigger, I hated that word, because deep down I already knew it was true. Why didn't you speak up in the meeting? I demanded. Her shoulders slumped. Because I wasn't the only one who saw it. Other engineers did too. And after Marion's memo about incident confidentiality, anyone who speaks risks getting walked out like you. They can't fire an entire department, I snapped. They can, she said softly. And they will. Someone powerful wants you discredited. Someone who needs Donovan scared. Someone who can pull strings we don't even know about yet. I stared at her, every piece of me vibrating with fury. So what, you think this is some executive power play? No, she whispered. I think this is a purge. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed from the path behind us. I turned sharply, but Avani grabbed my arm. That's not them, she murmured. I told someone else to meet us here, someone who knows more than I do. I spun toward the figure approaching, tall, dark coat, moving briskly, and in that second I felt something shift in the air. A pressure, a warning. As the figure stepped into the streetlight, I recognized him instantly. Elias Rourke, board member, power broker. The man Donovan once said could tank the company with a phone call. He was the last person I expected. The last person I wanted near me. He gave me a nod like we were old friends meeting for coffee. Miss Vega, he said calmly, we need to talk about the real reason you were framed. My heart hammered. And why, I asked, would you care? He gave a slow smile, a calculating one. Because, he said, you were never meant to take the fall alone. You were just the first step. Before I could ask what he meant, he added something that made the ground tilt under me. Someone inside Caldwell is preparing a hostile takeover. And you, of all people, are the biggest threat to their plan. If Elias Rourke had walked up to me holding a gun, I think I would have been less shocked than hearing him say I was the biggest threat to a hostile takeover. Because here's the thing about Elias. He's calm the way a loaded trap is calm. Wealthy, influential, insulated. Men like him don't get nervous, and they definitely don't meet ex-employees at Riverside Overlooks after dark. But Elias looked unsettled, and that scared me more than everything else combined. I folded my arms. Start talking. Elias glanced at Avani like he was checking whether she'd bolt. You didn't tell her, he asked. I told her enough, she said. You tell the rest. Elias sighed, pulled a small encrypted drive from his coat, and held it up like it was evidence in a murder trial. This, he said, contains every system access log, every internal audit, every confidential executive thread from the last 3 months. Why the hell do you have that? I asked. Because I paid to get it. I stared at him. That's illegal. So is what's happening inside Caldwell, he replied evenly. Morality isn't going to save the company. I stepped closer. Who's behind my firing? Elias didn't flinch. Marion Locke. Of course it was her. Cold. Careful, calculated, like she'd been installed in the company for a purpose no one else understood. But Elias kept going. Marion didn't act alone, he said. Your setup was executed with full coordination between her and another high-level insider, someone with access, influence, and enough knowledge of the architecture to weaponize it. Donovan, Avani whispered. Elias shook his head. No, Donovan was involved, but not deliberately. He's being manipulated. That made absolutely no sense. Donovan pushed the corrupted update, I said. Avani saw the logs. Elias nodded. He did. But he didn't know what he was pushing. I blinked. Come again. Marion fed him a fake patch, he said. One she told him legal needed urgently to remain compliant. She made him think it was routine. He never saw the code. She pushed it through his terminal while he was logged in. That stopped me cold. Are you saying he was a puppet? I'm saying Marion needed your termination visible, Elias responded, voice low. And Donovan, with his blind spots and misplaced trust, made the perfect scapegoat. I felt sick. Not because I suddenly trusted Donovan again, but because the betrayal was cleaner, colder, and more strategic than I'd imagined. Why me? I whispered. Why frame me? Elias met my eyes. Because you're the only person in that building who knows Caldwell's infrastructure well enough to spot the takeover before it happens. Your systems, your integrations, they're the last line of defense. You understand every choke point, every vulnerability, every undocumented patch. And that makes me dangerous, I said slowly. That makes you irreplaceable, Elias corrected. And irreplaceable people are liabilities during a coup. A coup, inside Caldwell systems. Stop, I said, rubbing my forehead. You're telling me Marion Locke is trying to seize the company? No, Elias said. She's working for someone else. The world tilted. Who? I demanded. Elias hesitated. Then he said a name I hadn't expected. Not in my worst nightmares. The takeover is being arranged by Vectorus Technologies. My jaw dropped. Our competitor, the one Donovan almost merged with 5 years ago? Yes, Elias confirmed. And Marion was placed inside Caldwell by their board. Your firing was Phase 1. The outages, Phase 2. Phase 3 comes next week, when they present evidence to investors that Caldwell's internal collapse makes a buyout not only necessary but urgent. And what happens to Caldwell? Avani asked. They'll gut it, Elias said, like a fish. My skin went cold, my stomach burned, my vision sharpened, but Elias wasn't finished. You need to understand the most important part, he said, leaning in. What? I breathed. You weren't framed to destroy you, he said quietly. You were framed because you're the only one who could stop them. And that was the moment everything snapped into place. Every odd shift in leadership, every unexplained outage, every mysterious audit, every closed-door meeting, every piece of it wasn't just sabotage. It was a play, a takeover play. And I somehow, stupidly, unwillingly, was the only one who could blow it up. But before I could decide what to do next, Elias said something that hit harder than everything else combined. You need to move fast, Nora. Because Marion knows you're talking to someone, and she will come for you next. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I sat in my apartment, hoodie on, hair tied back, a mug of coffee going cold on the table, just staring at the encrypted drive Elias had handed me. Every instinct in my body was screaming. Not in fear, exactly. More like the buzzing, electric hum I used to get right before a system meltdown I knew only I could stop. Except this time, the meltdown wasn't code. It was a coup. Marion Locke, Vectorus Technologies. A hostile takeover orchestrated from inside Caldwell, and a man like Donovan walking straight into it without even realizing he'd been turned into a weapon. It was a mess. A dangerous one. But dangerous messes were kind of my thing. At 3:41 a.m., I opened my laptop and got to work. I didn't start by looking at Elia's drive. No, first I looked at Caldwell's architecture. My architecture. Because when someone tries to take down a system you built, there's always something they overlook. A seam, a pattern, a fingerprint, something only the original architect notices. By 5 a.m., I'd already found 3 access anomalies Marion thought she'd hidden. 2 patch signatures that didn't match any engineer's style. And 1 metadata pattern, barely visible, but there, that pointed directly to an external key injection. Vectorus had been inside our systems for longer than anyone realized. And somehow, in a twisted, infuriating way, it made perfect sense that they came after me first. I was the firewall they couldn't code around. Around 6 a.m., Avani texted, "Are you alive? Barely. You coming to work?" I stared at the message. Should I? Technically, I was fired, publicly, dramatically, spectacularly. But nothing about this situation was technical. "Yeah," I typed. "I'm coming," she replied instantly. "Then we need a plan." We met in the parking garage beneath Caldwell, where cameras existed but were old enough that the footage would look like blurry ghosts arguing about cloud architecture. I showed her the anomalies. She showed me messages from engineers who were too scared to talk to me directly, but who suspected Marion had been tampering with deployments long before my firing. She also pointed out that 2 team leads had suddenly resigned the week before with family emergencies, except their badges pinged Vectorus headquarters 2 days later. This wasn't sabotage. It was infiltration. And the deeper I dug, the uglier it got. By 8 a.m., I had enough breadcrumbs to know that the takeover was already in motion. But I still didn't know the timeline, or the trigger, or the final move. "That's where Donovan comes in," Avani said, pacing. "You need to talk to him." "No," I said immediately. "He's compromised." "Yes," she snapped, "but he doesn't know he's compromised. That's exactly why we need him. You think Marion will see me coming, or you," she won. "From her perspective, we're out of the picture." "And Elia's?" I asked skeptically. "Never trust a board member," Avani said. "That man plays chess with human lives." She wasn't wrong. Still Donovan. The man who once stayed in the office until 3 a.m. eating vending machine crackers while we debugged a catastrophic server meltdown. The man who trusted me with every system that mattered. The man who didn't look me in the eye when they fired me. Could I trust him? "Come on," Avani said. "He needs you, and whether you like it or not, you need him. He's the only one who can give you access to the executive network." The network. The one above my highest credentials. The one only VPs and board members could touch. Access to it meant one thing, proof. And if I had proof, I could bring Caldwell to its knees or fix it. I took a breath. "Fine," I said. We talked to Donovan. But before we could finalize our plan, Avani's phone buzzed. A single notification. She went white. "What is it?" I asked. She turned the screen so I could see. An internal company-wide alert. A critical system event. But the source wasn't just alarming, it was impossible. The breach was coming from a system I built that no one should have been able to access without me. And then my blood froze. The alert included a username. User, Nvega status, active. Someone was using my identity. Again. But this time they weren't framing me. They were doing something worse. They were trying to erase me completely. I'd been framed before. But this was different. This wasn't a forged log or a corrupted patch piggybacking on my credentials. This was real-time access. My username, my authentication signature, my digital fingerprint. Being used inside a system no one should have been able to enter without me physically standing there. I stared at the company-wide alert on Avani's phone, my mouth dry. "This isn't just framing," Avani whispered. "Someone is trying to wipe you out of the architecture. Completely. Like you never existed." My hands started to shake, not from fear, but pure fury. "Impossible," I muttered. "Only one person has the clearance to override my biometric signature." Avani frowned. "Who?" I swallowed hard. "Donovan." But the moment the words left my mouth, something didn't feel right. Donovan wasn't stupid enough to pull something this blatant while the company was under pressure. And he definitely wouldn't trigger an alert this loud. If he wanted to bury me, he'd do it quietly, surgically. So who the hell was doing this? I grabbed Avani's phone and zoomed into the access metadata. There, hidden beneath the standard activity log, was a shadow signature. An invisible echo, a second identity riding on top of mine. Someone wasn't just using my credentials. Someone had cloned them, perfectly, down to the cryptographic sequence. Which means they had access to something only Donovan and I had ever touched, the identity kernel. The proprietary authentication core I had built myself. There were only 2 copies of it in existence. One was attached to my workstation. The other, Avani, I said, voice thin, who had access to the kernel backup. She was already shaking her head. "Nora, you told me you destroyed the backup after the compliance scare last year." I'd watched it wipe. I'd checked the logs, I'd archived the kill script, but someone had still pulled its signature. Which meant someone had accessed the kernel before I wiped it, someone who knew exactly where it was stored, someone who had been watching me long before the takeover plan even began. Before I could process that, a second alert pinged. Then a third. 3 systems firing at once, all using my signature, all rewriting core code. Avani grabbed my arm. "We have to move, Nora." "No," I said. "We need to see who's inside that system right now." We rushed upstairs through the parking garage, avoiding main hallways. If Marion or anyone aligned with Vectorus saw us, we'd be dragged out again, and this time not politely. As we reached the 10th floor, where the core servers were monitored, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. But this time the message wasn't a summons. It was a warning. You're walking into a trap. Stop. I froze. What the? Avani looked at me confused. What? Before I could respond, another message hit. They know you're coming. She's waiting. My blood iced over. Who's she? Avani whispered. But I already knew, or I thought I did. Marion, it had to be Marion. Except the next text shattered that assumption. Not Marion, the woman behind her. A woman behind Marion. Someone even higher, someone I hadn't even identified yet. I texted back. Who are you? The reply came instantly, like they'd been waiting. A friend, a former engineer. A ghost in your system. Former engineer. A memory surfaced. A resignation 2 years ago. Sudden, unexpected. A woman named Clara Wynne, a quiet senior architect who'd worked on early authentication models with me. A woman who vanished from Caldwell after a family emergency and never resurfaced in the industry. A woman who, I later learned from HR gossip, had been quietly recruited by My Stomach Dropped. Vectorus. Clara had been the one behind Marion, the real architect of the takeover, the ghost I never saw. Before I could piece it together, Avani whispered, Nora, look. We'd reached the server room, the glass-walled hub that held Caldwell's most critical infrastructure. And standing inside, alone, sleeves rolled up, typing rapidly into a secured terminal using my identity signature, was a woman I hadn't seen in 2 years. Clara Wynne, and she looked right at me through the glass like she'd been waiting the whole time. She smiled. A small, sharp, knowing smile. The kind someone gives when they finally get to checkmate the person who once stood in their way. Avani sucked in a breath. Nora, she's not wiping your data. No, I whispered, horror settling in. She's replacing me. I don't know what I expected when I finally stepped into that server room. Maybe yelling, maybe a fight. Maybe Clara pretending she wasn't in the middle of hijacking the digital version of my identity. But she didn't flinch. She didn't run. She didn't even act surprised. Clara Wynne turned from the terminal like she was greeting me in a coffee shop, not in the middle of committing corporate identity theft. Hi, Nora, she said softly. It's been a long time. Avani stood at my shoulder, frozen. I stepped forward because I needed to understand what the hell was happening. Why she was here, why she was using my name, why my entire life was being strategically erased. How? I asked, voice shaking with anger. You left 2 years ago, you weren't even part of Caldwell anymore. Clara smirked. I never really left. She motioned to the terminal, still logged in under my credentials, still running code that looked eerily like mine. Caldwell just thought I left. A chill slid down my spine. You faked your resignation, I whispered. Clara nodded. Vectorus offered me something Caldwell never could, freedom to build without politics. No committees, no constraints. No Donovan hovering over my shoulder pretending he understood my work. My stomach twisted. Clara wasn't arrogant. She was wounded, in a way that made her capable of anything. You disappeared, I said slowly, because Vectorus recruited you. No, she corrected, stepping closer. Vectorus didn't recruit me. They liberated me. That word, liberated, made Avani inhale sharply. Liberation is what people say when they think their destruction is justified. Clara folded her arms. You need to understand something, Nora. I watched you become everything I wasn't allowed to be. What the hell does that mean? It means I built early prototypes, stuff our systems still depend on. I wrote authentication frameworks that Donovan dismissed as too complex. But when you built on top of them, magically you became the golden engineer. I stared at her, stunned. I didn't even know she felt this way. You think I stole your work? She laughed, sharp, humorless. No, Nora, Caldwell stole it. Donovan stole it. Marion's job is just to finish what they started. I'm here because I finally get to take back what belongs to me. By destroying me, I snapped. No, she said, by replacing you. The words hit like a punch. Why me? I demanded. Why target me? Why frame me? Why erase my identity from the architecture? Clara's expression hardened. Because you shouldn't have been the architect, I should have been. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. You think Caldwell favored me? Clara nodded, eyes flat. They gave you visibility, credit, access. They let your work become the backbone while mine stayed buried. And Donovan, he never forgave me for calling out his incompetence. But he loved you for playing along. I never played along, I hissed. You stayed silent, Clara countered. And silence is loyalty. Her words cracked something open inside me because she wasn't entirely wrong. I'd watched Caldwell mishandle people. I'd watched good engineers get sidelined. I'd watched politics override merit. And I'd kept doing my job because someone had to hold the systems together. Clara stepped back to the terminal. Vectorus didn't place Marion inside Caldwell, she said. I did, and Marion isn't the mastermind. She's just the knife. I'm the hand holding it. The room tilted. Avani swore under her breath. Clara continued, voice calm and terrifying. You weren't framed because you're dangerous to the takeover. You were framed because you're the one person whose work can't be taken without first destroying the person behind it. I can't become the architect while you exist in the system. My throat tightened. And Donovan, Clara gave a small, cold smile. He was never planning a coup, he was planning a merger, and I needed him distracted, scared. Easy to manipulate. Your firing did that, but him losing you, that gutted him, and gutted men are predictable. I felt sick. This wasn't corporate strategy. This wasn't ambition. This wasn't revenge against Caldwell, it was personal. Deeply, obsessively personal. And then Clara delivered the final, horrifying truth. You built a legacy here, Nora, whether you meant to or not. I can't erase the legacy, but I can erase the person. And once I overwrite your identity in the kernel, you'll be locked out permanently. Your systems, your life's work will belong to me. She turned back to the terminal, fingers poised. You can't stop this, she said gently. It's already in motion. But she forgot one thing, one very important thing. I built the system she thought she controlled, and I knew exactly how to take it back. Clara's fingers hovered over the keyboard like she'd already won. Like she'd spent 2 years turning herself into the ghost of Caldwell systems, and tonight she finally got to haunt me right out of my own legacy. And she would have, too, if she hadn't forgotten the one rule of every system I ever built. I don't create anything without a way to take it back. I stepped forward slowly. Clara, I said, calm enough that Avani shot me a terrified side-eye. Before you finish, you should know something. She didn't bother turning around. I'm not interested in last words. Good, I said, because these aren't mine. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the private admin console, and hit the command I'd never told anyone about, not Donovan, not the board, not Avani. Root lockdown initiated. Primary architect override engaged. The terminal Clara was using flashed red, hard, as if the system itself recoiled from her touch. Her head snapped up. What did you do? I stepped closer, watching fear slip beneath her mask. You think you're the only one who prepared for this, I said. Clara, the identity kernel wasn't just an authentication system, it was a heartbeat system, and it recognizes one signature as the original architect. I raised my phone. Mine! The server racks around us hummed louder, like the entire architecture was waking up. Avani exhaled, holy shit! Clara's calm shattered into something sharper, panic, fury, disbelief. You built a failsafe, she whispered. No, I corrected. I built a kill switch. She lunged toward the terminal, typing fast, trying to disable the lockdown. Trying to outrun me, she didn't stand a chance. With another command, I revoked every cloned credential, every ghost signature, every forged pathway she'd wormed into the system. Revocation complete. Unauthorized architect removed. The screen went black, Clara froze, and for the first time since she'd walked back into my life, she looked small, human, breakable. You can't do this, she breathed. You did this, I fired back. You made this personal. She looked at me like she hated me more for being calm than for fighting back. Then she whispered something that almost made me waver. I didn't want to destroy you. I wanted to become you. It wasn't envy. It was obsession. It chilled me straight to the bone. You don't get to become someone by erasing them, I said quietly. You get there by earning it. Clara swallowed, eyes bright with rage. You think Caldwell will survive this. You think you will survive this. Marion is already executing phase 3. I shook my head. No, she's not. Why? Clara spat. Because you say so. No, I said, stepping back. Because she's already been removed. Clara blinked. What? Avani held up her phone, an email glowing on the screen. Board announcement. Effective immediately, COO Marion Locke is terminated pending investigation. Executive access revoked. Clara staggered. How? I recorded her, I said simply. And so did Elias, and so did Donovan. Her expression twisted. Donovan? He didn't know, I said. But once he understood what you did, how you used him, he flipped faster than you predicted. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, exhausted, angry in a way that wouldn't fade for a long time. Clara backed up until she hit a server rack. "You ruined everything," she whispered. "No," I said. "I stopped you from ruining everyone else." Security arrived seconds later. She didn't fight. She didn't speak. They cuffed her gently like she was breakable glass, and maybe she was. 2 months later, Caldwell Systems looked nothing like the place that fired me. Marion and Clara were facing federal charges. Vectorus's takeover collapsed publicly and spectacularly. Donovan stepped back as CEO, naming a successor the board actually trusted. Me. Nora Vega, CEO of Caldwell Systems. The irony wasn't lost on me. Revenge didn't come with fireworks or a victory parade. It came in the quiet moments, like walking into the office knowing no one could ever erase me again. Like updating my own title in the system I built. Like rewriting policies so engineers would never suffer the way Clara had before she broke. But the closure? That came on a rainy Tuesday when I finally stood alone in the server room, the hum of my architecture all around me. I touched the terminal, breathed in, and whispered, "You can't replace the architect." Then I walked out and left the door open behind me, just in case anyone else ever tried.